Such a fantastic session, guys. Very hands-on. You guys are going to learn a lot about research integrity and ethical approvals. We've touched a little upon this on the day one when we talked about academic integrity and how this is so very much a part of academic integrity, not something like an extension added to, you know, our lives as PhD students or researchers. So you guys are in fantastic hands. You already know Sonia. And Shiva, he's like a wealth of expertise and knowledge on this topic, and I'm sure you guys are gonna have a fantastic day.
Okay, lovely. So the stage is yours.
Yeah.
I wish you good luck with the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Sonia, just give me the command and I will.
Oh, I'm not in charge.
No, what I'm saying is if you can give a verbal command, I will change it.
Oh, okay, sounds good. You're a co-host. Could you make me a co-host too, just in case if I have to share?
Salim, can you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I already am.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay, let's make it worth for Angela and Jamie and Beatrice to be here 3 in the morning. No pressure. Okay, Shiva, shall we start?
Yeah, so they have already introduced, but I just wanted to tell the participant that for research purposes that the meeting is recorded, and I wanted them to be participating in the activities, and the names and everything will be anonymized, so we don't use any names or anybody, and try to be try to come up with truthful answers. Never mind whether it's the right answer or not, that's not a problem. But as long as whatever you feel, come with that answer, and then we can discuss this later. Yeah, so move on.
So we have a group discussion. What is a good research and what is a good researcher? How would you define it?
You can write in the message. I got 2 laptops, so I can read the message for Sonia and myself, so we can.
I can see it in the chat, Shiva, because it's not me sharing the screen.
Okay, that's fine.
We had such nice conversations yesterday.
Yeah.
When I was teaching, they are really active in chat. So how would you define good research?
Anyone? It's too early, I think.
A good researcher, okay, now they're coming. A good researcher makes research which has good implications, defining a good research question. A good research should contribute to the literature, reliable and honest. Someone who behaves in an honest and responsible manner, reducing harm to participants. Good is a relational word, so the definition is also depends on what relation we are defining. True. Using ethical guidelines and standards and contributes to society. Good research provides evidence that is robust. Good research process is a thorough process that leads to authentic and credible results, original and clear. Good research involves systematic planning and ethical guidelines, meet with ethical standards. Yeah, many different aspects of good research here. Could you change the slide? Someone who tries to understand, investigate, and then shares knowledge. Yeah, basically, when you're a good researcher, there are several different components of being a good researcher. You have to know the discipline. It goes without saying. You have to know your discipline. But you also have to have a good knowledge of methodology, what is appropriate for different types of research. And you need to know research norms and conditions, as well as ethical and juridical aspects of research. And today we are going to focus on ethical and juridical aspects of research, but of course being original and clear and having good research question, that's a bit perhaps outside, not outside, but it's another component of being a good researcher. So today it's going to be quite a lot about ethics and juridical part of research. So it doesn't mean that's the only thing you have to know, but it's definitely something you need to know. Can we switch to? And there are different definitions. Some people talking about responsible research. The research must be of good quality and morally acceptable. So you always have this quality of research, the content, and the way it is done, methodology, and the morally acceptance. So this ethical part is definitely a part of research. In the Declaration of Helsinki, it is said that research must be consistent with good scientific practice, and the researcher must be familiar with the scientific literature. And what is often named is Robert Merton's kudos norm. So if you switch to the next slide, we can discuss what these are quite old norms. It's from 1942, and kudos is the acronym for communalism. So the research community and society as a whole. Oh, go back. You're too fast for me. The research community and society as a whole have the right to be informed of the results of research. So scientific knowledge is a public knowledge. And that's a very important component. So you need to publish. You need, if you come up to something, you have to share it. That's a part of being a good scientist. Don't hide your knowledge. Universalism. Scientific work should be evaluated with reference to scientific criteria alone. Science is independent of race, color, or creed. So the only important thing is the strength of argument, not where the argument, who is producing the argument. That's the second part. The third part, disinterestments. The researcher must have no other motive for his or her research than a desire to contribute new knowledge. Of course, it would be great to win a Nobel Prize, but it shouldn't be, if you have other things like getting a promotion, getting to be a good famous professor, it might lead you to choose the path that is not really okay, which is not ethical, if you have other paths than contributing new knowledge. And somewhere, I mean, I can somehow understand, okay, people want to get Nobel Prize and everything, but it shouldn't be the main motive. If it is a main motive, it can lead you to unethical behavior. So, yeah. The last part, the fourth part, organized skepticism. Free inquiry, but everything is doubted. So constantly question and scrutinize, refrain from expressing an assessment until sufficient evidence. So yes, when you have new research, go and tell everyone, but wait until you are certain of that. And that's something that also that's been shown now with the preprints during COVID-19, that people tried to publish things that weren't really gone through peer review and were not investigated enough and researched enough. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, so
this is yours.
This mine anyway. So just to show you the factors influencing the good research. So as far as I'm concerned, it should have the research, a good research should have the research governance in terms of the policies to underpin the research. The process are well defined. It should be good definition should be given. The process should be regulated by either internal laws or the universal laws, so on and so forth. So the research governance is especially important for any research, but in clinical research, the research governance takes a priority. On the other hand, this is what we are here, the ethics. Ethics is more or less the support of the individuals that are taking part, who are taking part in that research. So it is about the participants, it is about the researcher, it is about the research culture, collaboration, the organizations involved, and the intellectual output. So all these should be underpinned by ethical procedures so that everybody is protected. The ethics and integrity, the next bit is integrity, is more or less interchangeable. So integrity is all about the research itself. Make it original. There's no point repeating the research that has already been established. honestly reporting. You report what you see rather than report what you expect, and try to be open. And then whatever the analysis you are doing, it should be rigorous analysis so that there's no flaws in the analysis part of it. So these three are actually governs the research, a good research, but they are interchangeable, especially the ethics and integrity are, although they are defined in two different ways, but they are normally used an interchangeable way. I will explain how these can be defined later on. I'll pass back to Sonia now.
Yes, if you look, there's some great material. One of them is the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, ECCRA. You have 4 principles of good research practice: reliability, honesty, respect, accountability, that can be applied in different contexts. You can apply it in research environment, training, supervision, and mentoring. In different research procedures, in safeguards, data practices and management, collaborative working, publication and dissemination, reviewing, evaluating, and editing. So these principles, those 4 principles, are main principles of good research practice that can be applied in many different contexts connected to research. These kind of that kind of material is very good to read as a reminder where it is applicable. So next one. Yeah. In Sweden, there's a really good, it's like 89 pages, if I remember right, a text about good research practice. It's a research council that has it, and really summarizes what good research practice is. So I always recommend it to my students. It's free to if you go just to good research practice Sweden, you'll find it. Vetenskapsrådet is the author of this. But basically, they have 7 different principles of good research practice. The first one is you should tell the truth about your research. And at the end, I'm going to talk about different types of misconduct, and basically it goes back to this: you should tell the truth about your research, quite a lot of that. You should constantly review and report the basic premises of your studies. So go back and be careful what you are doing, be honest once again. You should openly account for your methods and results. Once again, it's telling the truth. You should openly account for your commercial interests and other associations, very important in some areas of research, technology, for instance. You shall not make unauthorized use of the research results of others. And here we have, once again, honesty. You shall keep your research organized, for example, through documentation and filing. And that's also something that's very important and a part of good research practice, to know where you have your informed consent, for instance, and your data, and to be able to show it. You shall strive to conduct your research without doing harm to people, animals, or the environment. And you get this slides, you have the link to this. It's really good text. It's 89 pages, but it summarizes quite a lot.
Yeah, so instead of asking you the question, I'm going to explain myself to give an idea about the important steps of the research or any research. So I am from a medical research background, and I know that many of you are from social sciences, humanities, education, so on and so forth. And ethics is for everyone. It's not linked to one institution or one subject area. But even the research, the way the research is conducted, you always, despite the discipline area, you always come with the research question. Sometimes, my research question normally arise in my mind or out of the blue while I was driving. Most of the time, I get my research question while I'm driving. Some of them, they get the research question while having a sip of alcohol, so on and so forth. But once you got the research question, then you need to see whether this research question can be valuable for the public. Remember, the research should be valuable to the general public. There is no point doing any research without some kind of kudos from the research. So for that, you need to have a literature review to see whether how much has been investigated in that particular research question. Whatever the research question you come up with, there will be something that has been done a long time ago. So a good example is everybody think that the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus is an immediate thing that happened in somewhere in Wuhan, 2019, but when I started researching that, it's actually first reported in 1969. So everybody thinks that, oh, this is a new disease. No, the information is already there, out there. So you need to carefully review the literature to see what kind of question you are asking, whether it is valid, whether it will increase the knowledge of that particular subject in a general public or scientific communication or the other research area. Once you have gone through the literature review, then you will know not only whether it is worth doing, but also how to do it, because somebody else would have used some methods, questionnaire-based study or laboratory-based study or investigative study, so on and so forth. And you would have come up some methods, and then with that methods, you modify the methods according to your needs. And that I call it operationalization. So you made the methods according to the research question, according to your aim, according to the objective. Then the research starts, the data collection happens, and again, when you think about when you think about data collection, even long before starting the data collection, you need to think about how you are going to analyze the data. What are the statistical packages you are going to do? What is the most suitable packages you want to do? And what is the amount of or number of people needed or number of responses needed in order to make them statistically significant report. So all these things you need to think about it. And then you do the analysis and you will publish. And then you complete the research or anything. But as far as the research ethics is concerned, research ethics should start even before you start the research question and should continue even after you publish and completed the research. That is where many of us forget to understand that we only focus on research, you only focus on methods, only focus on the duration of research. But ethics doesn't stop there. It starts long before the research starts, and its end or not does not even end even after completing of the research. Why and how, I will explain it a bit later on. Now it's back to Sonia.
Yes, and we talked about research ethics. There are many different names for the same thing, so don't be surprised. But it's basically about ethical conduct in research and following ethical and scientific standards and legal and institutional rules in the conduct of research. But it is also the study of ethical conduct in research. And as I said, there are several names. Responsible conduct of research is something you might have seen, or ethics in research, research integrity, scientific dishonesty and research misconduct. Those last two focus on the negative aspects of research ethics. But it's good to know that it's basically, they are talking about the same thing. So don't be just confused with that. Okay, next slide.
Yeah,
is yours.
again, back to me again. So this is again, probably this might be the most boring part of this presentation, is about the responsible research conduct. The reason I have included this, just to let you know the difference between the research ethics and research integrity. and even in the last conferences, there are a lot of conversation about try to separate the meaning of research ethics from research integrity, because both are very loosely used by the research community. But as far as I am concerned, the easy way to separate is research ethics is about the people, and the research integrity is about the research itself and its process. So research ethics try to protect the participant, the researcher, the collaborators, other employers, funding societies, and the general public. Whether it is a questionnaire-based studies or it is a lab-based studies, these are the people who are going to be involved directly or indirectly, and the ethics or research ethics try to protect them. On the other hand, the research integrity is actually protecting the research itself. It's all about enhancing the confidence in the results, enhancing the confidence of the general public about the researcher. Yeah, when this researcher report, we can trust that data. Why? Because he always truthfully reported. So there are subtle differences, but the rule of the thumb is the ethics is all about the people. The integrity is about the research itself, the process, how it is reported, so on and so forth. And they both go hand in hand. Without ethics, you cannot be having a research integrity. Likewise, the other way, vice versa as well. So just remind or try to understand that the responsible research conduct is underpinned by ethics as well as the integrity. Yeah.
And when we talk about ethics and law, it's very important to understand that there is a difference. When you talk about ethics, you have acceptable and unacceptable behavior. You have personal ethics, what we have in our homes. You have professional work ethics. For instance, in our case, what norms, what good science says. We have national, local rules that we have to adhere to, and so on. But although you can use the law to enforce ethical standards, it's not the same, and it's not always possible to use the law to force people to behave ethically. You can have ethical behavior that is illegal, and you can have unethical behavior that is legal. For instance, ethical behavior that is legal, you know about Greta, I suppose. I'm from Sweden, so I have to talk about her. But basically, when she went to demonstrate outside the government in Sweden, she was breaking the law because she was supposed to be at school. So you can argue that this was illegal behavior. Okay, she was a kid, she wasn't the one who should be punished by the parents, but it was still perhaps ethical behavior because she did it for a good cause. So you have several of these examples where you can have ethical behavior that is illegal, but you can also, of course, have unethical behavior that is legal. And I'm going to talk quite a lot about co-authorship. There are no laws that can prohibit you to add a co-author that shouldn't be there. You can't prohibit that kind of behavior in a law, but it's still unethical to do so, to put someone without contribution. So there is a difference between those two things. And when we talk about research ethics, we talk about researchers' own ethical responsibility, following the rules, but also these professional codes of professional ethics that you need to conduct. So there are three different parts. It's both ethical, personal ethics, and professional ethics, and following the law. One more thing that is important when we talk about the law, and because we are going to talk a bit about the punishment, of course, it's important to realize that the intention is also something that is in all this action very important, because misconduct is usually deliberately or by gross negligence, but you can still be careless. It's bad research, but it's not necessarily misconduct. So you can still do bad behavior. So this intention is important. But of course, if you do something wrong, you can't just say, oh, I didn't know, or I was careless, or something like that. You can still be punished. But normally, all these instances where misconduct is judged, the intention is something that they really look at quite a lot.
Right. So why research ethics is important? There are two ways to look at it. So the first box is going to tell you about the external influences. And the second box here on your right is more or less the integral part of yourself. I wanted you to decide which one you would follow before I explain those two things. So I'm going to give you pause for about 2 or 3 minutes. You can read the external influences on your left and the internal influences on your right. And then as a researcher and as also a people who uphold integrity, which one is better suited for you to be ethical in your research? You can write either left or right. If you say left, that you are more or less bound by the external influences. If you say right, then you are more or less bound by the internal influences. If one person says right, she might be right, she might be wrong. The other one says right again. Oh, so many people are saying right. Yes, okay. Again, right. And yeah, I got a very interesting response. Right first and then the left second. Okay, that's fine. Internal first and then, yeah, so they are saying that when you do internal, you naturally satisfy the external. That's a very interesting response. Anybody else? Right, so I will close it. I mean, if you ask me that, yeah, everybody's saying more or less, everybody's saying right. If you ask me that person, because I don't want to name the person, but the person who said internal, and when you do the internal side of it, or when you are influenced by the internal side of it, you will naturally satisfy the external. The difference between the internal and the external, let us start with the external. External means you are influenced by somebody else. So the research ethics is important because it is a professional requirement, because it is an institutional policy, because without that you can't get the funding, because that this is an expectation of conduct of research. So they are more or less bound by a law. So as if you are doing it for other purpose. So you really don't care about ethics, but because these idiots are asking those things, I am going to be ethics. But on the other hand, if it is internal, it's the way to maintain the common standard. You are a research ethics person. You are an ethical person. You are a person with integrity. You are dedicated for your safety, your collaborator safety, laboratory safety, public safety, everybody's safety. You are worried about others. You are worried about yourself. You are more or less a reflective person, learn from your mistake, and then give mutual respect. So more or less, this is an inbuilt thing. I'm really, really very happy that all the answers more or less underpin right rather than the left. But in reality, so far, you will be the people who are going to change the rule. So far, many of the researchers, not all of them, many of the researchers, they do research ethics. Oh yeah, I need to fill this, otherwise I won't get the funding. That is what everybody does. I know it's a tedious process. It's about minimum 25 pages in some universities. And in my university, it's 40 pages. and that takes a lot of time. But you need to understand that you are not doing it for the sake of filling the form and making sure that the police won't get you, or somebody won't sue you. You do it because you own it. So you own, ethics should be owned than imposed. This is the word, as far as I know, I always emphasize. I don't know whether somebody else has already told this, so that's the reason I'm putting in the quotation mark, because if somebody else has told this beforehand, then I am just acknowledging who told that first. But this is my way of telling. So you own research. You know, the good example I always say for my first year students, if you are going, the integrity starts within you. If you are going in the toilet, especially for the male student, the female students are much more ethical. The male student is, if you go to the toilet and do your business and then look around as nobody is there and then just come out without washing the hands, that is not integrity. That is not integrity, right? So you got to own it, because you always wash. I mean, just joking, because everybody wash their hands, but you always wash because that is inbuilt in your system. Likewise, you own the ethics. So again, this another question for you. So I'm given, this is actually, I got it from a website. They are saying about the life cycle of a project. So this is not entirely correct, but what I'm just using their information about what are the different stages of the life cycle of a project. So you need to find the funding. Without funding, you can't do anything. You need to develop a proposal. You need to submit the proposal and get the ethical approval, set up the project, manage the project, close out the project. So this is what any project, whether it is sociology, humanities, language research, or even medical research, this is a cycle. Normally, there might be some changes between the steps, but normally these are the collated step you are going to do it. So my question is, at which time point you need to worry about the research ethics? Whether it is a funding stage, developing stage, ethical submission stage, project starting stage, or managing stage, or closing stage. At when you need to worry about the research ethics. And just to help you, this is a tricky question. I've given you the answer as well.
I forgot to tell you, Shiva, they're very good.
Yeah, they are good. I'm probably both of us are a little bit blessed, because you and others, you have trained them for 2 or 3 years, sorry, 2 or 3 days before as well. That doesn't mean they don't know about beforehand, but they are more or less enhanced.
They knew everything already
So
yesterday.
it's just like, you know, fully charged batteries, you know. So actually, you know, everybody is getting the same answer. I would agree with them at all stages. If you ask me, even before finding the funding, you need to think about ethics. Even after close out the project, you need to think about, okay, I got this data saved in my computer. What will happen if I left my laptop? This has actually happened to one of my colleagues. Left my laptop in my car. Somebody stole it. You need to think about that. You need to, because he has thought about that, even the laptop was stolen, everybody is protected. The anonymity was protected because it was encrypted. So we need to think about that as well. So this is another video. Hopefully it will work. Otherwise, we will possibly move on. So this is about the ethical decision making. So I always use a 5-minute clip for you to listen to it, watch it, and then pick some points about ethical decision making. So these are not my clips. This exact clip I borrowed from the University of Texas in El Paso. They use it for something else, but I use it for you to ponder your points. So I think this is about the common ethical decision making. Let's see whether it works. Doesn't. Hopefully. Can you see it? No?
We can see, but there's no sound yet, Shiva.
Have you clicked on the, when you shared your screen, you have to tick in the box, share
Okay.
computer sound. So try to share it again, otherwise I can do it.
Nice one. Yeah, that's good. Hold on. Let me go back again. This is what happens. Dinosaurs like me. The screen, share sound. Yeah, I made a mistake. Share. Can you see the slides now?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'll go to that slide.
Clear that there are two ways of approaching this process.
Hold on, I'll start from the beginning. Yeah.
It works now.
Is that okay?
Ethical decision making, choosing between the self and the other. When talking about ethical decision making, one has to be aware that there are two ways of approaching this process. The individualistic approach, or where a person is responsible for his or her own decision making, and consideration is given first to how it affects the self, rather than the other. There is also what might be called the communal approach, or where members of communities are partially responsible for the behavior of their members, and thus make decisions based on that view. Consider the debate about the legalization of drugs. Advocates argue that they have an individual right to do with their body as they please. A more communal approach would ask them to look beyond the individual and reflect on issues of public safety and the potential harm to others. In addition, when the interests of the larger community are included in any debate, solutions can be offered. What kind of drug policies will promote the good of both the individual and the community? It can only lead to a greater understanding of the issue for both sides. Should the self or other come first when making decisions? The conflict between individual and community is not easily reconciled. Anthropologist Colin Turnbull has written about the Mbuti pygmies of the Congo. The Mbuti have long employed nets of twined liana bark to catch their prey, sometimes stretching the nets for 300 feet. As Turnbull came to understand, Mbuti hunts were collective efforts in which each hunter's success belonged to everybody else. But one man, a rugged individualist named Sifu, had other ideas. When no one was looking, Sifu slipped away to set up his own net in front of the others. Word spread among camp members that Sifu had been trying to steal meat from the tribe, and a consensus quickly developed that he should answer for this crime. Sifu defended himself with arguments for individual initiative and personal responsibility. He felt he deserved a better place in the line of nets. The tribe responded that if that were the case, Sifu should leave and never return. The Mbuti have no chiefs. They are a society of equals in which redistribution governs everyone's livelihood. Faced with banishment, a punishment nearly equivalent to a death sentence, Sifu relented. This ended the matter, and members of the group pulled chunks of meat from Sifu's basket. Among the Mbuti, as with most hunter-gatherer societies, equality is a system that enhances individual freedom. Following these ethical rules helps prevent any one individual from taking advantage of others, or even dominating the group as a whole because of unequal privileges. However, just as it is in our society, the negotiation between the individual and the group is always a work in progress. There are times when our willingness to consider both the good of the individual and the good of the community still leaves us in a dilemma, and we're forced to decide between competing ethical claims. Affirmative action programs, for example, bring concerns over individual justice into conflict with concerns over social justice. How does one decide? When facing such dilemmas, the weight we assign certain values will sometimes lead us to promote the common good. At other times, our values will lead us to decide on actions that will protect the interests and rights of the individual. But perhaps the greatest challenge in discussions of ethical decision-making is to find ways in which paradigms are designed to promote the interests of both.
Right. So again, I waited until the acknowledgement comes so that it's not mine, just to make sure. So now I wanted you as participant to write 1 or 2 words you picked it up and understood about ethical decision making. Don't just write the words, but only write the words you have understood. Okay, ethical decision making depends on this, or I need to be careful about this, this, and this when I decide on ethical decision making. So I'll give you about 2-3 minutes. Let's see. Yeah, the ethical decision making should always observe public good. Yeah, that's good. Need to be considered both sides, individual and community. Another one has written respect others' existence. Ethical decision making benefits everyone equally. Right. So I am really, as Sonia has already highlighted, that you are a fantastic group of people to work with. I'm really, really pleased, because whenever I put these slides to university specific or discipline specific workshop, I will get blank. Nobody has written anything. He's talk about ethical decision. All of a sudden, Imputi tribe and net fishing. What the hell he is talking about? But I can understand more all of you are researchers, because you actually look through the points that to ponder. So this is all about equality. You need to thinking about negotiation. Good example. Again, I hope Sonia won't mind it. So we both agreed to present this together. And to be honest, both of us are so-called busy people, or at times we are busy. And we never had time to have a proper meeting. So what we did was we shared our slide, and then we had a email conversation, and then we picked it up. You know what? If I had given my presentation alone, that might be entirely different from Sonia giving her presentation on her own. But by the look of it, the way it is going, only you are the people who can judge this. But the way it's going it is much more better than the individual presentation now, because we are taking turns. So we are relaxing, you are relaxing, and also we are taking turns to underpin the ethical decision. So one of the things you've got to be very careful, even if you do a single research, there are people involved. Your supervisor is involved, co-supervisors are involved, technicians are involved, or the other people who are going to help, or even ethical committees are involved. And also, as the first person highlighted, the most important thing is this going to be involving at any stage the public. Even if you don't do any research relating to public, the end product of your research should give some kind of give back to the public. That's the reason we are doing research. So, I mean, in medical research, there are so many examples that has happened. I'm not even allowed to tell in the public, because they are rubbish results, research. There's no need for that research. It's just like I know I always use one example is that the gravity. So when the apple fell down, then that person reported, I don't want to name the person, everybody knows his name anyway. That person reported, this is called gravity. So that I call is original research. But that doesn't mean if I had lived that long ago, then I can repeat the research and say that apple falls onto the ground because that is called gravity, and then say I repeated with oranges. Oranges also follow the rules of gravity. What's the bloody point of that? Because it's already proved. So think about that as well. So you need to promote the common good, and that's the reason I use this bit complicated video to explain how the ethical decision making is going to impose your decision. And again, there are other people saying about, yeah, most of you have already got what I wanted you to get. It's all about collaboration. It's all about equality and inclusion. Yeah, sorry, Sonia now.
Yeah, so basically what we are going to talk now is that responsible professional behavior in research means a responsibility towards 3 different aspects, you could say. The first one is research subjects or objects of study. The second one is consequences of the research on the society at large. And the last one, the research society and other researchers. And we are going to explore each of these 3 different types of responsible behavior in research and the kind of responsibilities you need. So we take the first one, it's research subject or object. Could you move to the next slide just?
Yeah.
It's basically what we are going to focus here is laws on ethical approval for research that concerns people. We are not going to talk so much about animals, but if you do research on animals, you really should check the requirements and ethical procedures you need if you are going to use animals in research. There are also other types of research that needs ethical approval, like for medicaments you need, or if you have work with substances that are dangerous, radioactive, for instance, and such. So there might be other laws and ethical approval procedures you need to take when you do your research, and you have to know them. We are not going to go into detail, but we are going to focus on ethical approval for research that concerns people. So next slide, please. And next slide, it's just the title. So basically what you have when you have research that involves people are 2 different aspects, or two different, a bit at times conflicting wishes. And the first one are research requirements. You can, when you do research, you have basic research or applied research. In basic research, you want to create new knowledge that develops theory and method within a research area. Applied research, you want to create new knowledge that can directly benefit society. So those are research required. You want to do as good research as possible. But also, and this is more important, you need to protect individuals. And historically, many of improvements when it comes to the laws regarding ethics, they all came after big scandals. The one that I'm referring to now is Nuremberg Codex from 1947, and you see it's 1947. It's directly after the Second World War, and it really is connected to it. And all other big you can see the connections very easily between scandals and the laws. So at least you could, those scandals should be used to prove the research procedures. But the big one came in, of course, in 1947 in the Codex, and it really became, it really is a reaction to what Nazis did during the Second World War. So the individual should be protected in research all the time. And what this codex says that you need to have informed consent. You must have good consequences for society. You have to minimize the risks to subject to humans. Each participant has the right to terminate their participation in an experiment at any time. And it's very important. You can't force anyone. They can always say no and turn away, and you need to make it possible for people. And the leader must interrupt if it seems likely that a participant will be injured. So it's not only the subject that can stop it, you are responsible to stop it as well. if someone might get hurt. Okay, Shiva.
Okay. The essential information. So this is where most of you are eagerly waiting. So what are the essential information needed for ethical approval? So these are the minimum, the least you need is the summary of the background of the proposal and the nature of the data to be collected. We call it power calculation. Power calculation means you need to calculate how many number of subjects or number of responses, number of questionnaires are needed in order to obtain a statistically viable data. That should be given to the ethical committee. We will talk about ethical committee later on. So to get that ethical approval, you need to show that you are spending this money to prove something which cannot be proved otherwise. So that is more or less a proposal. And then also you need to give information about the methods you are doing, how the data is going to be collected, whether the data collection will affect or harm mentally or physically a person or in a group of people, so on and so forth. And you need to talk about the procedures and the equipment you are using, measuring tools used to be used, and who are the participants. If there are any participants, who are they? Are they human beings or animals, children or vulnerable people? Who they are? You need to be careful on that. And what is the methods you are doing, and whether these methods are cruel or in any way harmful, physically or mentally. And if you are using any substances such as drug or some kind of chemicals, then you need to produce a risk assessment. What are the risks involved in conducting the research? For example, if you are doing a research only sitting in front of the computer, there are risks because you are going to look into the computer screen 24 hours. So that is the risk. The other risk is you can electrocute yourself. The computer can all of a sudden burst into a fire. So those are the risks you need to predict, the at most risk, whatever you can have, and then you need to number them. What is the probability of the risk? So for example, if you are doing a research in front of the computer, the probability of computer smashing off automatically without anybody's problem is probably moderate nowadays because the use of computer has increased. If it is pre-COVID, it's different things. So that, again, the reason I have taken that as an example is depend on the situation you are in. Because, I switch on the computer 4 o'clock in the morning and I switch off the computer 12 o'clock in the evening. That's what my normal routine. The chances of computer bursting off is high now. But previously, pre-COVID, no. So that depends on the situation. And you need, if you are using chemical, you need to see the chemical, we call it COSH, the chemical assessment. What are the nasty effect of the chemical? Is there any hallucinogenic effect on the chemical, so on and so forth. How you are going to collect the data, how you are going to store the data, how you are going to keep the data long term without being hacked. Earlier, when I was doing my PhD, this is not a problem. All you need is a cupboard, a lock and key, problem solved. Mostly the cupboard with the what you call metal cupboard, so that will protect everything. But now, data cannot be stored in cupboard. It's mostly stored in the computer. That opens up a vast amount of risk, hacking, stealing, everything. So those things you need to think about before you apply for the ethical approval, even before you apply for it. And that doesn't stop there. That is where my next slide comes in. Once you have got the approval, this is where the long time ago, there's a slide on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. This is where the right-hand side, right people comes into action. You need to think about post-approval mindfulness. So I'm 100% sure when you are doing research, especially PhD students, I'm 100% sure you will probably, at one point, you will think about me or realize, oh yeah, that old guy told me this. That two things will happen when you are doing PhD. The direction of your research at least change slightly. And the other thing is just funny, I'm just telling you, you will come to the point that at one point you will think that I wanted to kill my supervisor. If that doesn't happen, then your research is not going very well, right? Because that is the way the research is. It's highly attentive, and you need to spend about 18 hours a day or probably 20 hours a day. So you need to think about what are the changes of the original process. So you got the process, you got the methods, now your method is changed. If the method is very minor change, you just report it back. But if the major change, you just stop the research, full stop. If the massive change, you stop the research, go back to the drawing board, rewrite the ethical approval or amend the ethical approval, get the approval and start it. And if there are minor changes, you need to think about the evidence of risk assessment. Any changes will change the risk assessment as well. And then you got to submit that as well. It doesn't stop there. Once you have completed the project, that project completion should be notified to the ethical committee. It can be an institutional ethical committee or national ethical committee or international ethical committee. You need to notify that. And also you need to notify any adverse events that might have occurred, even a small event. So, I mean, this is not a research. In my teaching, I use to study the behavior of mice. And most of the time, we are very, very careful in UK that the animals are much more protected. So we are very careful about the animal, but most of the time, the adverse effect happens in the other way. Most of the time, the animal bites the human being. It's only a small bite. Yeah, you can just wash it with water and then plaster it or something. You forget about it. No, every single incident should be reported, because if it is repeated so many times, then that risk assessment is not valid. You need to think about other. It actually happened. It happened in my research. Then the students were asked to use what you call gloves made up of clothes, so that the mice will bite the clothes rather than the fingers. So you need to think about that as well. So any adverse event must be notified. Some application will require certain protection clearance. So that means if you are doing animal research, you need to spend about 3 or 4 days of your life doing an animal protection course, and then you sit the exam, pass it, and then every year you need to renew it. And then even if you are adding, again, Sonia will elaborate that bit later on in the authorship. If you are adding or removing new researchers, that should be reported as well. So remember that as long as your research approval is given, don't think that you are in a clear, right? You are never in a clear if you are a researcher, because ethics underpin everything we do. Right, so let me go through, because one of the accusations about me, because I've been doing this kind of activity for a long time, one of the accusations for me is I'm from a medical research. So I always, it's just like, two train drivers, whenever they go for pub, they always talk about the train timetable. Likewise, I always give medical research. So recently, not far beyond, I changed my approach because I thought there are research outside medical profession. So I include now as well. So social science research and humanities research, there are some difference in ethical issues. For example, in medical research, use of vulnerable people are almost minimal. We use that, it's almost minimal. But in the social science or humanities, they wanted to study the behavior of vulnerable people, how the external influence will affect the vulnerable people. So that is one difference. The other one is in social sciences, they use social media for the research. When you do the social media of the research, you might think, yeah, that's good. Well, why he's talking about? The problem with that, two things. One is you don't know the person is the person who call himself is the person. And the second one is most of the time, you know the person, because the photograph is there. So you need to think about, okay, how I can protect his anonymity or her anonymity because it is in the social media. And also in medical research, we do longitudinal data collection. So that means you collect the data for decades or even so many years. But this is more or less frequent in the humanities research. It's a longitudinal data. And the most interesting or astonishing part of the non-STEM research is they are allowed to deceive people to do some research. Deception is allowed as long as the person or people are not mentally or physically affected. In medicine, it's no. You can't even think about deception. But in social sciences and humanities research, it is possible. It's allowable. It's not entirely possible. It's allowable. And also the covert research. Covert research means you just, investigative journalism. You just go there being covertly understand the activities and the behavioral changes of, say, drug users, how they behave, so on and so forth. And also, you can do research in a public setting. So the next slide I have more or less, sorry, before that, I wanted to show you the aspects of non-medical research. This is an, what you call, a student's journey. He is just explaining how he faced the ethics doing a non-medical type of research and what are the concepts he learned from it. And then I will let you again think about points and words. You can pick it from what he has said. Again, this is particularly useful for the people who are doing social science research and humanities research, non-medical research. If you are one or two students with medical background, then the next slide will have the medical slide as well. So don't worry, I'm looking after everyone. Right, let's see whether this works.
Because I had to do the PhD in the UK and because the university itself has certain standards, it was required that even before I went to the field, I had to fill an ethics form, which I did at the history department, and I had to answer a number of questions to primarily see whether the research, the participants who were involved, methods of collecting data, and whether those methods were going to be injurious to the respondents or participants in any way. Of course, the ethics form went and it was approved even before I went to the field. Now, one of the things I did, or I normally do on the field in order to be able to meet copyright requirements, is to explain the nature of the project to the participants. If I'm conducting interviews or I'm doing recordings, the people ought to understand the nature of the research and to know that the research is purely going to be used for academic purposes. And that I'll be using their videos, I'll be using their pictures, I'll be using their interviews, within the larger scholarly community. And so people outside of these communities are going to have access to this information. So should they see their images on the internet, for instance, or should they see their images being used in a book or in an article publication, they ought to know that I'm doing this within the larger interest of trying to promote scholarship and not for commercial purposes. And sometimes they will give me their consent. Well, we are happy to that our voices will be heard somewhere, so we are happy to have you record us. We are excited that somebody is even interested in our experience. We haven't had people come to ask us about these things because some of these things are so traumatic that we don't even talk about. So once you are interested in knowing, we are also happy to be able to give you information. So these are, but basically you have to explain to the people for them to know exactly what you are going to use their research for.
So again, I'm just waited for the acknowledgement to come. So this is not, again, not my slide. I got it from the University of London. And again, I need to apologize that there are some questions coming to me. Luckily, Sonia and Zenith are taking turns to answer it, because when I present, I can't do multitasking. So, but we can, if you want to ask any question, we can take it up at the end of the session anyway. So please keep your questions. You can ask directly to me or Sonia at the end of the session. So from this ethical approval procedure, so what he is saying is, he's from a country, he doesn't know much about the ethical procedure. He came to London and he realized there is an ethical procedure for any research, and then he's explaining about the steps that he was involved with. So can I ask you to write what are the things you picked up from this? I'll give you 2 minutes and then I'll probably, people are getting tired now, I think. Right, nobody is answering, so I will carry on. I don't want to waste everybody's time. So from when I looked through this, yeah, one of them must be transparent with participant as to, yes, when but that's right, that's one of them. The nature of research should be explained, so that the people are now trying to answer the questions, but because of the time, I will move on. But these are the things: informed consent and the respect. Whether it is a medical research or non-medical research, these two things, there are so many other things, but two things are essential. And especially from this clip, this is what he's more or less trying to emphasize again: informed consent, about telling them why you are doing this research. So for in medical research, again, pardon me using a medical research as an example, we intervene with a drug, subjects who will get the drug and subject who won't get the drug. Then we will explain why we are doing that, how we are doing that, what are the side effects of that. Is there any financial gain you are going to get from this? When you are going to do the research, how long do you need to be there, or how many times you need to be invited for the laboratory, or need to conduct the survey, so on and so forth. You need to worry about the equality. Some of you have already written that. Copyright requirement, academic purposes, is not for commercial purpose. All these explain. Don't ask me that, don't think that you cannot do research on commercial purpose. You can, as long as it is explained to them properly, and then explain the procedures and everything properly and got the ethical approval, then yes, you can. At times it can. And how to storage, the data storage has become a big problem because of the increasing amount of hackers. And everything revolves around respect, self-respect, mutual respect, and the respect to the community that are taking part in that research. So this is about ethical approval on the non-medical research. And same is given from another university's clip from the ethical approval of the medical research. And then what I wanted you to know is, because you have seen the non-medical research issues, and now you're going to see the medical research related issues. And then I wanted you to do two things. One, are there any commonality? If so, what are they? And are there any difference? And then you can write it after watching the video. Hopefully this video will work.
In research, there is increasing emphasis on the ethical conduct during the research study. However, few students engage properly with what it means to conduct research in an ethical manner and the many considerations involved, particularly when the subjects of the study are humans, as is the focus of this video clip. The Encyclopaedia Britannica defines ethics as the branch of philosophy that seeks to determine the correct application of moral notions such as good and bad, right and wrong, or a theory of the application or nature of such notions. They provide us with guidelines of what behavior is acceptable and when we are acting immorally. Ethics are therefore not only relevant in research, but permeate all aspects of life. Various theories of ethics, what is morally right or wrong, and norms relating to ethical behavior have been debated since the times of leading philosophers such as Aristotle, Hume, Kant, and Bentham. According to the Council for International Organizations of Medical Sciences, research is a class of activity designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge such as theories, principles, or relationships, or the accumulation of information on which they are based that can be corroborated by accepted scientific methods of observation and inference. More specifically, research on humans includes studying any aspect of human functioning or behavior, whether at a cellular or a societal level. Unfortunately, there are many examples of atrocious non-ethical experiments conducted on human subjects in the name of science, which has led to the development of what we consider nowadays the 4 leading codes that guide the conscientious preparation of proposals for scientific studies and on how research should be carried out. Underpinning all these codes are the principles of respect, beneficence, and justice. Respect for persons refers to the idea that people must never be treated as a means to an end for others. 2 fundamental considerations include respect for autonomy and protection of people with diminished autonomy. This includes the subject's right to voluntary participation and withdrawal, equitable selection for participation, information to the subject, privacy and anonymity, compensation, and feedback. Beneficence is also called non-maleficence and means do no harm. This entails maximizing the benefits and minimizing possible harm, and conducting research that will ultimately benefit society. Doing so requires a good research design, competent investigator, and exercising utmost caution to ensure a favorable balance of risks and benefits, even if it means having to terminate an experiment in the interest of protecting the subject or society. Justice refers to the ethical obligation to treat each person in accordance with what is morally right and proper, and to give each person what is due. This includes the subjects and the sponsors. Distribution of the researcher's benefits and sharing the burden of research is also encompassed in this. These components that feed into the fundamental ethical principles form part of any application for ethical approval of a research project involving humans. As in the words of the Chinese teacher and philosopher Confucius, do not do to others what you do not want to have done unto yourself. For more information on conducting ethical research using human subjects in South Africa, please consult the following sources.
Yeah, that is only for South Africa, so you can worry about it. But I just wanted to show you the CC by. So, I mean, while rest of you are watching the video, there was a very, very good question. The question of always in my heart is the fact that in certain cultures, especially in my country of origin, which is Sri Lanka, in my country of origin, that if you say that right? We are going to do a research and this is what we are going to do is, but I need your written consent. As soon as you say the written consent, I'm not coming. That means it's unlawful. You are doing something unlawful. I don't want to come take part in that. And that might be true in one of the countries written there as well, especially in the Southeast Asian country. It is more or less a culture-bound thing. But unfortunately, we need to more or less in a positive way try to explain the need of the research and how these things are going to be kept, everything, and then without, I think you need to take the consent. Without consent, nothing is possible. It is difficult in some community. I wanted to do so many different types of research in particular social groups, but I couldn't, because as soon as you say the term, the written consent, then everybody backs off. I mean, even recently that has happened, and that's the reason that question was really at my heart. That is a problem we are going to face as well. And also there's another question about the storage and termination. That should be planned exactly as the way the person who has said is that that should be planned well ahead. How we are going to, especially if you are storing the data for a long time person, then you need to define what is that long time mean. I mean, in DNA research, long time means you save the DNA, your great-grandchild can use the DNA to do some research. So you need to define the time point when that research ethics is going to elapse. And I got a fantastic question for you to discuss later on. We will come to that later. So can you just in a quick words, is there any difference between medical ethics and approval procedures and the social sciences or non-medical ethics? Anybody wanted to write anything? Again, probably the question, yeah, we can discuss that later about this, getting the written consent. Hopefully we will have time the way it goes. Because, you know, I haven't even finished yet. Sonia got similar amount of things to talk about. These are essential for you, so we'll see. Right, so I think because of the time, I will go fast. So again, there's not much difference, because the most important thing is the risk versus the benefits. I mean, even now, probably many of the UK channels and other news channels, they always use the term risk versus benefit because of the vaccine and COVID-19. Because to be honest, none of the vaccine, don't bother about COVID-19 vaccine, any vaccine, they do have risk, they do have side effect, and they do have benefits. The only difference with the social science research and the medical research is, in medical research, you are allowed to weigh the risk versus benefit. And then as long as you can show the benefits are much more higher or tremendously higher than the risk, then there's a chance for you to get the approval. And I don't know how many of you know this, that everybody, think that all these, I'm not panicking anyone, all these vaccines have got the approval for the usage. That's slightly different from ethical approval, but that approval is called emergency approval. It's not, it's a much more shorter version than the normal approval. Normally the approval procedures takes years or decades, but because of the emergency situation, they approve. That doesn't mean the approval process was not rigorous. It was rigorous. Do not panic that because I'm telling the procedure, that doesn't mean that, oh, these vaccines, this guy said that these vaccines are bad. No, they analyze the risk versus benefit, and the risk versus benefits was analyzed by an independent authority from the companies they have produced, and then they decided. But remember, in medical research, that is acceptable. And it's also all about beneficent. The main thing about medical research is the society should benefit. And that's what we call societal benefits. justice, anonymity. Anonymity is a common thing for medical research as well as non-medical research. And then respecting the privacy, and it should be voluntary. This is the thing that many of the researchers, medical or otherwise, they always worry that the volunteers or the subject has all the independence of removing themselves from the study at any time point of the study. That means even if you have analyzed the data, and if you wanted to publish, and at that time one person says that no, I don't want to be involved, then you need to remove that person and then redo the experiment. Then when I say remove that person, you got another problem. How you are going to identify that person, because you are already anonymized. And that is where another term is never comes from my, I cannot pronounce that term, but I will try my level best. That term is called pseudonymization. Pseudonymization is you anonymize in such a way that you give a number. So you can, instead of identifying as a name or person, a number is there. So if a person is wanted to remove himself or herself, he should not tell her name or anything. He need to tell, okay, this number. Then you can go back and remove the number and then reanalyze. Remember, it's a pain for the researcher who has got very limited amount of resources and the funding to do the experiment. And just before publishing, that one person wanted to remove it. And that one person, if you remove that data, it won't make any sense. The same data, same conclusion doesn't change, but yet you need to remove it. Do not think that, oh yeah, it's not going to affect anything. What's the point maybe going back to the statistician, sitting there and do the research again? No, you need to do that. That is unfortunate for the research, but that is called ethics. That is how we need to work, because remember, it's all about justice, anonymity, privacy, and it should be voluntary. You should not force. And we can look through whether we can force it or not in some other case studies in a minute. So again, I'm going to go through very quickly about the difference between the medical research ethics and the social science research ethics. The medical research ethics, mostly it involves humans or animals, but the social science research is not always human subject. It can be a behavior, it can be a group, it can be some procedure. So social science research or humanities research is slightly different. And the behavioral studies are not, medical researchers are not always involved in behavior, but there are high incidence of behavioral studies in the social and humanity sciences research. Most of the time, medical research are happening in the controlled and private environment, but in social science research, it is possible to conduct research in the public setting. And most importantly, the deceptions is allowable in social science research as long as the deception is not anticipated to create any physical or emotional harm to the participant. So there are some subtle differences. I don't want to go each and everything. If this is recorded, you can have a look at it, or you can contact me. I can send you this data as well. These are not mine. Actually, the only thing I did is I summarized it by reading through 2 or 3 papers which are given there as well. Right, we will move to the next one. Yeah, again, I'm going to go about the ethical policy. The ethical policy underpins. Without a policy, you can't do anything. So there are institutional ethical policy. There are what you call national ethical policy and international ethical policies. All these policies are making sure about the accountability and fairness. There are terms about respecting people and the individual and group responsibility, protecting the public, and support for the research, and enhancing the aims and the research with integrity, and also making sure you collaborate with the right people and produce right results. And yeah, so the ideal ethical policy, again, Sonia and we as a group, we have been analyzing different type of ethical policies from institution to institution. We just started it. We only finished about 4 or 5 institutional policies comparison, but I don't want to name the university or the institution. This is what that attracted me, because their research ethic code is undermined or underpinned by research integrity and ethical concordance. So they worry about the good research practice, good planning. They worry about funding, from where you are getting the funding, how you are going to data collect, disseminate the data, and everything that involves during the research, before the research, and the after the research. So during the research, before the research, how they are going to apply for funding. And is the funding organization is ethically sound? Then you need to think about it. So this policy actually asking or indirectly expecting you as a researcher to think about that. To think about collaborative partners. Are they ethically sound? Are they with integrity? Is there any conflict of interest? For example, if you are doing a research in the effect of smoking on good health, and it is funded by tobacco industry, then there is a conflict of interest. And we need to think about confidential information. And then during the research, as I already told about the responsibility of the supervisors, the fund, how it is used. Just because you got funding, you can't just spend it. That there's an ethical way to justification to spend it. Data protection, long-term data collection and storage, freedom of information, that's another problem, because under the freedom of information, there are, I mean, anyone can ask you to answer any question, because that is what freedom of information is concerned. But you need to think about, okay, how am I going to exempt my study from people asking questions? If somebody asks you, I want to know the number of, the nature of people who are involved in your research. That can't be, because that actually affects the anonymity of the volunteers. So you need to put a clause saying that this is exempted because of this, this, and this. Because the freedom of information means anybody can ask anything, especially if you are working in an institution. And the after research, how are you going to publish the data? There are so many open access data available, and this particular policy, I'm really, really interested in. It was written a long time ago, but they even thought about the potentially predatory journals as well. That's why they put a clause on open access journals. If it's open access, you need to think about the integrity. How about retaining records, storing the long-term data? So this is what that attracted me, because so far, there are a lot more to analyze, but so far, this is the only institution that thought about before, during, and after research, and how to be ethical. And not only that, Sonia is going to elaborate this bit further about, they thought about research misconduct. What is, they produced a misconduct policy that linked to the research ethics, breach of duty of care. And then they even thought about the whistleblowers, how to protect the whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are the people who inadvertently report the misconducts, properly report to the commission or the internal auditing people. And they should be protected. And then they also worried about maintaining the self-esteem as well. And this is an area, most of the universities, the maintaining esteem is the one most of them focus. They are more worried about protecting themselves rather than protecting the research. That doesn't mean all of them are bad, but many of them are worried about the esteem. But this particular institution, they thought laterally about all of the things that might affect. So that's the reason I wanted to show this as an example as well. And as far as committees are concerned, there are so many types of research committees. Most of the time, they are institutional research committee. So these committees are linked to an institution. And sometimes the institutional committee has got two different committees, one for the medical research, or we call it invasive research, and the other one is non-invasive research. And the other type is each department will have one research committee. But the most, what I call, difficult one is the nationwide ethical committees. For example, in UK, the NHS, National Health Services, if you want to do research involving them, then you need to get the nationwide ethical committee. There are some advantages, there are some disadvantages. But because this is more or less, we are talking about the ethical behavior rather than the different types of committee, I'm not going to go into the details. Perhaps if you need anything, we can send information, or we can have another workshop on that committee side of that. Again, this just quickly say about the ethical research procedure. The procedure in this particular university is an example. They have got two different groups, so ethical committees. One is the Human Biology Research Committee. The other one is Non-Invasive Research Committee. So they got only two. So one, anything other than medical research go to this group, or medical research or animal science research go to this group. But start, if you got a study involving patients, the first question is the human or animal participant are there? If it is yes, then it will go to the Human Biology Research Committee. If it is no, it will go to the Non-Invasive Committee. Otherwise, the questions are, the details of the studies are the same, participant information are the same. So most of the questions are same, but there are some additional things linked to the human biology, which I have already covered. And there are some additional things that link to the non-invasive research, like, conducting research covertly or deception, so on and so forth. Yeah, I think.
No, don't do this slide.
Okay.
It's typical for Sweden, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, that's fine.
So go to next.
Again, this is probably, I think this is the last.
And then we'll have a break after this slide.
Yeah. So this one is about another example of how ethical review procedure is conducted in one university. Remember, this might be entirely different from your institution. The reason I'm showing this is now, after this session or after this workshop, go back to your university and look for this and try to find out what is the procedure. Most of the universities, they use a flow chart like that, but many, they don't. If they don't use a flow chart, because I really like photographs and flow charts. And if they don't use the flow chart, then you need to read about 40-page document, but you need to read it because that is the approval committee. In this particular example, the researcher comes with the what you call a policy. Sorry, the research ethics application, and that application will be received by the research department, or so-called ethical committee department, and the clerk or the administrator will decide two nominated reviewers. So it's independent reviewers, and those reviewers will look into the fact whether this research is, this is where I always laugh, because this is, they ask whether this research is real research or just research. What's the difference between real research and just research? In that particular university, and that's the reason I left that slide. Sonia doesn't want to, so is that links with this anyway, because for them, any undergraduate study, undergraduate research within 3 or 4 months is not entirely a research. I don't believe in that. Any research is research, but for them, if it's an undergraduate research, they will decide whether to give the approval of ethical approval or not. So these two nominated referees, they themselves will decide, or this is an undergraduate project, this will not have any impact on institutional level. Therefore, we will decide whether to allow this. So it might be approved, or it might, they ask to revise, revision needed, so on and so forth. The problem with that, for me, this is not appropriate, because research is research. Whether it is 1 week or 2 weeks, is research that should be properly assessed. But when I conducted them, that said that the rigorousness is not changed. They will look for everything they wanted to look for, but instead of handling by a group of committees, only 2 people will handle it. But still, I'm not 100% happy with it. But if they think, okay, this is a proper research, I don't like the term proper research. Everything is research anyway. If it's a proper research, it will go to the ethical subcommittees. That means it can be a human ethics committee, or bioethics committee, or non-invasive committee, depending on the research. Then they will either approve or decline, or give revision notes, how to revise it, and then they will revise back, and they ask more questions as well. So can you see that different universities or different institutions has got different procedures? So I can only show the good ones and the bad ones. I show you the good ones about the policy. I show you not so good one in the ethical review, but I wanted you to go back and ask your research committees or research office to provide this information, so that you know, probably if you don't know already. Yeah, sorry, Sonia.
Okay, the break now.
Okay.
First, let's have 15 minutes or
Yeah.
16 minutes, because it's 39 now. So 5 to whatever time
Yeah,
zone you
okay.
are in.
That's fine.
And perhaps you could stop sharing so I can start sharing mine, because I'm having,
Yeah,
so I sleep
sorry.
telling
Yeah.
you next
Yeah, I think, yeah.
slide.
Hold on, I will stop sharing.
Yeah.
Perfect, yeah.
So see you in 15 minutes, everyone.
Yeah, I need to get some water as well.
Okay. Let's see. Are you here? We'll have to continue because there is a bit more information we want to put into you. I know you have information overload, but you will have the recordings and we'll be able to check it once again. And we really want to give you as much information as possible. So sorry for that. I know it might be too much. So, okay, when you talk about ethical approval, quite a lot it's quite easy to see why you need it for in medical research. And if there are any medical students here and PhD students, please don't kill us, do your ethical approval. You know, everyone understands why this is important. But in many other areas, like social sciences, in humanities, people are not really, that's my experience from Sweden, people are not as used to getting ethical approval or thinking in those because they don't really realize okay, they're not treating people with any medicaments or doing operations or anything. So they think it's not necessary, but of course it is. And one thing that's really important when it comes to ethical approval is how you handle personal data. And personal data is all the information that can directly or indirectly identify a person. It can be a name, it can be a social security number, it can be email. It can also be Facebook, or I don't know if they have some their Instagram names and stuff like that. So think about personal data like anything where you can identify a real person. And internet research is an area where we really don't consider, because it is online, it's open, and you don't really see it as personal data because it's open, but it still is. So almost anything can be personal data. And the biggest problem is that you can connect several data together. So even if you don't give all the information, if you say, okay, a guy born in Sri Lanka, working in UK on ethical approval with very hard pronounced last name, yeah, you can make it quite narrower. And realize that I'm probably talking about Shiva, even if I don't say his name. And so it's what you collect and also what you do with your personal data. So it's not only collecting, it's also processing and storage. And storage is very important, as I said previously, how you handle that. So all of these things are important. And when you have personal data, that's one thing, and then you have sensitive personal data, that's even more important. And sensitive personal data in Sweden, at least, are defined with racial or ethnic origin, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, genetic data, and biometric data when it's processed to uniquely identify someone. In these cases, ethical approval is necessary. If it's just personal data and you are in the EU, you also have GDPR that still applies, even if you not always need ethical approval, at least in Sweden, if you don't handle sensitive personal data. Informed consent is another thing. You need it even if you don't always need ethical approval. You might need informed consent. It's a bit different in different countries. So when research involves people, and Shiva has talked to you about informed consent, but I'll just repeat here that when the research involves people, they should be informed about the research and their participation. And once again, we said it several times today, they can choose whether they want to participate or not, and they can withdraw consent at any time with immediate effect. And this consent shall be voluntarily, shall be explicitly and precisely connected to certain research. So I can't get informed consent and use it for whatever else you want to use it for, but what people strictly consent with. And it must be documented. And we had an interesting conversation in the chat about if it needed to be written or if oral consent is needed. Shiva, what do you think about that? It must be documented. That's
I wanted to answer that question when it comes to my slide anyway, but I just wanted to tell you that the recording, even if the verbal recording, that the written consent is important because
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to check with you too. So what you need to give information on the overall research plan, the purpose of the research methods, consequences and risk, who's the principal of research, so university probably, that participation is voluntary, and the right to suspend participation in the study at any time. So there are some forms you really need to check in this informed consent. We also had a question about vulnerable groups. And I think that the SIOM's ethical guidelines are really good. And you can find guidelines for informed consent and how you can do research involving vulnerable persons and groups, adults are incapable of giving informed consent, children and adolescents, pregnant and breastfeeding women, and so on and so on. So these guidelines are really good. They're made for medical research, but of course they're applicable for other research as well. So Shiva.
Yeah, so it's just a heading anyway, so we go for the next one, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
So what we are going to do is, we got 6 scenarios. We got to go quickly because all this time we were shouting most of the time. I wanted you to be in part of this. These are actually happened. I call it, we can call it either ethical dilemma or ethical case study. I prefer calling case study. So first one is about the financial incentive. This is actually happened. One of my former PhD students, who is a teacher now in another institution, she sent this advertisement about taking a test. What they are saying is everyone who are taking this test, 3 tests on site in that campus, followed by 1 home testing, their names will be included in a prize draw, and the first 3 people will get some financial incentive in the form of MSN vouchers. So it's an advertisement for COVID-19 lateral flow device test. So my question is, sorry, if you click on the next one, or questions are, is this ethically acceptable? And the next one, what other problems you need to think about? Again, remember that you need to think about before the research, during the research, and after the research. It's not a research, it's a study, but still the ethics happens there. What other problem and what are the ethical justification needed for approval? Just quickly, anybody wants to write? You write only. I got only 2 minutes, not more than that. So, first of all, whether it is acceptable or not. Probably by this time, everybody would know that it should be acceptable because it has been advertised. And if so, what are the other problems they should have thought about it when you apply for the research? So let me explain, because of the time, let me explain what has happened was this one at the very early stage of the COVID, and everybody is reluctant to do these tests, and they wanted to enhance the students taking part in tests. So they come up with idea, they went for the ethical approval. To be honest, it's not entirely ethically sound or ethically acceptable, but their justification is they are more or less assess the risk versus the benefits. The benefits is more or less trying to show that the benefits will be outweighing the risk, because the more and more people are getting tested, the less and less chances of COVID spread within the campus. So that is one of their justification. And the other justification is that the names are actually, they are not captured as name, they are captured as student numbers, because these are students who have got student numbers. So the student numbers is more or less pseudonymized, and that test is only happening to that particular institution. No other external people are allowed to do this, and therefore the ethical approval committee of that institution has given the ethical approval. But as one of you have already suggested, that is not entirely the acceptable way of ethical thinking, but under the circumstances, This is COVID-19, testing, and the measures for the benefits outweigh the risk, and therefore they agreed. Yeah. So as one of you said that, you know, the debate is the one that's highlighted in yellow. That is a problem because it's a financial incentive. Right. So the next case study we can discuss the next case study is this actually happened. There is a person who wanted to conduct the research, and that research needs to understand the effect of a newly developed IT software on enhancing language skill. So they separated the group into two. One group will have that package to learn and enhance the language skill. The other group were given the normal way of studying, go to the library and learn it, right? So if you click on the next 201, Anna Sonia. So is this study ethically acceptable? What measures are needed to obtain ethical approval and ensure beneficent to all participants? Remember, the beneficent should be all participants. This is a non-medical or non-invasive research. Two groups on the same cohort of students, so that means undergraduate students are split into two. One is going to get some intervention which is going to enhance their learning, or that is what they are planning to do. The other one, they don't have that intervention. Anybody wanted to say whether it is ethically acceptable or how they might have made it ethically acceptable? Anybody? Right, again, I will explain that. It is not ethically acceptable at all. Actually, this bounced back. So they applied for ethical approval. The ethical approval committee said, no, you can't have it, full stop. Then they thought about it and they said that the study will carry out as it is, but at the end of the study, the group who hasn't got the intervention will be given that intervention. Therefore, everybody will be benefited. So they said that for the purpose of study, we separate the group into two. You conduct the study, and then once we got the data we wanted, we use we call it placebo group, and in your group, in your means social sciences, you call it as a control group. They will have the same intervention to enhance their learning by giving that IT software. So at the end of the day, everybody is happy, everybody is getting that in the intervention. That is how they did that. So it is perfectly acceptable. The second time they went back, it was agreed, and also with one condition, they need to report that or record that, or some form of report should be given that the other group has got that intervention. So that is the only thing that happened. The next slide, please, sorry, Sonia. So this is again same intervention on the clinical environment. I want you to understand the difference between the clinical ethics and the non-clinical ethics. Is they got a study population of patients. They randomly selected, remember, they randomly selected a group to be intervened by a new drug. Remember, this is a new drug. The effect of the drug is not known. And then there's another control group. They will get a placebo. They will get some form of another form of drug, but that is not the drug. It's more or less a placebo. And both group will have follow-up, and then the results will be compared. And if you put the questions, Sonia, sorry, is that again, first is more or less entirely similar to the first case study, but whether this is acceptable or what are the other ethical justification needed for this study to carry on. And again, probably those of you who are in the medical field, you know that this is norm. This is the norm in medical research. This is what most of the medical research is happening. And again, in this particular case, the ethical approval was given at the first time without even asking question. The only difference here in this with the other one is the fact that the drug, the effect of drug is not known. And also the patients were given all the expected effect and probable side effects and explained to them. And then I explained to them that we will separate you in one control group and the treatment group, but are you ready to be either of the group? And that is how they got the consent. And the only difference here is in the IT intervention, they knew that intervention will have some enhancement. Here, the drug intervention is a new drug. We don't know whether it will have the enhancement. So that is the way they got it. So this is a slight difference between the medical research and the non-medical research. The next one, oh, sorry, next slide. Yeah, this is, this study is it's at my heart anyway. So this, this researcher has obtained an ethical approval for the long-term storage of clinically important, precious clinical samples. Unfortunately, the ethical approval will lapse in July 2021. So next month, the ethical approval is gone. But remember that the ethical approval was obtained for long-term research, but his definition of long-term research, say from 1998 to 2021, and the 2021 July is coming next month. So if now what happened was is actually what this is actually happened, he has found some interesting data. For that, he need to continue the research looking for another protein. So he wanted to keep, because the samples are there, already there, and these are precious samples. Collecting the samples will take about another 15 to 20 years. The samples are there with him, in his hand, not in hand, in the liquid nitrogen. If he wanted to carry out another study with the same sample, what are the problems? Whether, first of all, whether it is applicable. Everybody is stunned, but because of the time, I'm going to go fast again. So remember, here, the problem here is the way the ethical approval was obtained. Because it's elapsing on the July 30th, 2021, he cannot use the any of these precious samples without a proper ethical application. He needs to justify a proper ethical application. Even that is not allowable if the original application doesn't include the new protein he wanted to look at it. So this is where I wanted to tell, if there are, I don't think there are any medical researchers, but if you are a medical researcher, you try to think about your research and its future aspiration. Even that is true for any researchers, future aspiration. So luckily that researcher in the original application, he didn't specify a protein. He specified all the proteins that might have some influence of that disease, saved by that one sentence. Otherwise, he cannot reapply for the research, because he applied for one protein, and therefore that is done. You can't, because the informed consent was obtained for one protein only. So be careful, especially don't just think, especially this is especially true for the PhD student, don't just think about your research. What is the future of your research? And then try to write the ethical application in such a way that you can reuse, because these are precious clinical samples. It's very difficult to obtain. So that is what, most of the time it is being trained in the medical field, but I wanted the other field, other people in the other field also think Think about that as well. And that we never write in one protein or one name. We always say that all those things that might be affecting or might have direct or indirect effect. The next one, please, another 2 more, let's say 2 or 3 more. Right, I think this is, no, another one, I think. This is another interesting, these are all actually happened. This is non-medical research. This is not a research at all. This is a lady. He is focused in teacher. He's an excellent lecturer. She always produced new innovative methods of teaching. She produced some innovative teaching for the final year students. And then I don't know about the other areas, but in UK and many of the other areas, we always get module feedback. So the students will write about the module, whether the module is good, whether the subject is good, or the lecturer is good, or if she is bad, or things like that. So in the module feedback, she got many students praising that approach. And there are some neutral comments, there are some 1 or 2 negative comments, but many students praising that. So she got a variety of comments. So now she thought, okay, this is a new intervention I have done it. And these are the results about student satisfaction. I'm going to use it and then try to publish a paper. And in that case, her dean has told her, you need to go for the ethical approval because you can't do that. So now she is trying to put a retrospective ethical application. My question is it allowable? No, the students were not informed, privacy of the students, nothing, no. Not by her, sorry. One person blatantly said, cannot obtain informed consent, full stop. I would like that person to be in our ethical group, ethical advisory committee. Straightforward, clear, right? To be honest, she cannot apply for, no one can apply for retrospective ethics. I knew that there are some incidents that has happened in different countries. They did retrospective ethics, but it is ethically and morally wrong. But in this particular case, I think what might have done is that because it's the module evaluation form, the university has got an ethical policy that university, if wanted, can use any of the module evaluation, anonymized module evaluations, and then use the analysis. And then the student, when they start the university, they need to sign that paper saying that anonymized feedback can be used. So she got away with that. Because the university has thought about this long time ago, she was protected. But strictly speaking, there's no retrospective ethics. So be careful, especially, this is especially true for the lecturers, because the new lecturers, you are with innovative mind. If you think that this innovation can produce something, think about the ethics. Because why not? You can teach well, get some good response, and publish as well. You are more or less ticking 3 different pillars of higher education: research, teaching, and the engagement activity. So think about that as well. And the last one, I think, yeah, one more, sorry. Oh yeah, this is the one. I think this is the last one, I think. So this is another company that produce How to Train Your Brain. They publish a book, How to Train Your Brain. And then they contacted you. I'm asking you. You means each one of you. Right, we got this, what you call a fantastic book. I wanted you to use that book. We will give you loads of money. You need to prove that this book actually enhances about how to train your brain or not. I mean, they said that even if you say otherwise, that's fine, but we will give you more funding. What are the problem with that? And then this will be covered by Sonia as well later on with the Andrew Wakefield study. This is what actually happened. Anybody? To be honest, this is a conflict of interest because the company that produced this thing is asking you to research. So if you have a good ethical committee, they will say, no, you can't do that. And even if you are thriving for research, they will say, yeah, you can do that, but you need to put a declaration saying that this is funded by this company. So remember that how these things affect. We always think, okay, ethics, there is a policy, we read the policy, there's a committee, we get the advice from the committee, and they conduct the research. So my part, and again, Sonia will reiterate that as well, think laterally. Think the third move. I mean, just like a chess. Even before you go to the chess, you think about how you are going to move. Then think about, okay, I'm moving this queen somewhere. What will his response and how can I respond and how can he respond? Third move or fourth move, think about that as well. Right, the next one I think is done. Yeah. Yeah.
What are the ethical issues?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks,
So,
Sonia.
okay, we covered quite a lot about responsible professional behavior in research, responsibility of your research participants and study objects. But it's also a responsibility towards the consequences on the research on the society at large. So the question you need to ask yourself is, can my research be used to hurt someone? And how does my research influence the society, the environment, future generations? So that's one part of the relationship you have with the society. But there is also another way of looking at it. Research can provoke threats, especially if you study gender, if you study racism, if you do animal research studies, it can actually provoke threats from the society. And one thing that's also important to be prepared is how to explain that research and how to deal with that kind of threats, because I know people that are have got people. There was someone in Gothenburg that put a bomb outside the gender studies. There were people trying to collect information, private information about researchers in the field they didn't like, and so on and so on. So there are two different ethical issues here. The one is what you are doing to the society, and the second one to be a bit prepared that you might have to deal with different types of influences from the society towards you personally. The third aspect is a responsibility toward the research society and other researchers. And there we can have this big issues about research misconduct and other deviations from good research practice. In Sweden, in the Act on Responsibility for Good Research Practice and the Examination of Research Misconduct, research misconduct is defined as a serious deviation from good research practice in the form of fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism that is committed intentionally or through gross negligence when planning, conducting, and reporting research. As you can see here, fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism are there. But not other deviations from good research practice. And that's very important because these three are what is very, in many ways, easy to prove. And that's why it's much more common in the law. And it's both intentionally and through gross negligence. So you have to be careful if you have to know the rules, as simple as that. And as you see, it's in the all aspects, in the whole process of research, planning, conducting, and reporting, which Shiva was talking about previously. So usually you define research misconduct as plagiarism, falsification, fabrication, then you have other deviations from good research practice. They're often connected to the publication ethics. You talked about the predatory publishing yesterday. I'm just going to talk about a bit about that. But first, something about fabrication. As you all probably know, it's to consciously present non-existent data as if it existed to support your own claims. Very practical, very unethical, because we would really like to find all this data. So I usually joke that it's very practical, but of course it doesn't work that way. It can also be to make up interview persons. It can be not only data, so it can be interview persons, it can be citations, something that supports your data, and so on. So in text-based research, it's to come up with quotes, it's incorrect translations, it's changes in the meaning of the text, because it's usually we focus on research that is done in invasive research. In qualitative research, it might be to fabricate informants and so on. So it's not only fabrication of the data. Falsification, it's to consciously present a selection of data that supports your own hypothesis and or to withhold data that contradicts it. It's basically to ignore outliers, to ignore the experiments that are not supporting your hypothesis and stuff like that. And it's of course not okay. It's also important to know that you can still do the wrong interpretation because the lack of the knowledge. But it's not the same as misconduct. This is really to consciously present and just to choose in between your data. And in humanity, data is primary sources and text, and data is often public and easily accessed. And the research is often based on the interpretation of the data, but falsification can, of course, not be included just because texts are publicly available when we talk about differences between medicine and other forms of research. Plagiarism is something we talked quite a lot yesterday. In the book I tried to recommend previously, good research practice. It is defined as in research entails a researcher using material, text, ideas, hypothesis, design, methods, data, results, or conclusions. As I said yesterday, it's not only about texts, consciously or through carelessness. Once again, you have this conscious or gross negligence in such a way that it presents a misleading picture of the researcher's contribution to the project at hand. So it's quite wide definition here. Here's just a joke. It's not called plagiarism anymore. It's prepackaged originality. I know Shiva likes jokes, so I put this one for him. But there are also, of course, other deviations of good research practice. It's not getting ethics approval, or not having an adequate informed consent. Misuse of the funding, getting the funding and go to Hawaii instead of doing the research you got the funding for. Inappropriate archiving is also an aspect of bad research practice. Conflicts of interest, unethical peer review. You are going to be asked, and probably some of you already have been asked to do peer review. It's a very, very important process in research, but it can also be misused. For instance, I have a group that is doing the research, and I got a paper that Shiva has done. And I see that he did basically the same research, really in a good way. And I, as peer reviewer, tried to stop his publication because I just don't send the peer review back in order to be the first one that's publishing that research. That's an example of unethical peer review. You can also, it's not only peer review where you have this collegial review of, you can have review of applications and proposal and basically do the same thing. And so there are two different types of conflicts of interest. The third part is what you had in Shiva's example. It's conflicts of interest when it comes to getting funding from different companies. Meeting the society. It's also has also some interesting ethical aspects. You have always to ask yourself, what can I say as a representative of scientific community? And in many cases, especially in humanities and social sciences, we are usually asked to go to TV or newspapers and say something as experts. So it's very important to really be aware, what can you say as an expert? Can I really stand behind what I'm saying? Is this the research I'm done, or am I just telling what someone else has done? And be very open and clear. What are you talking about? It's very important because in some cases you have different roles. Sometimes you are an expert and be called in that way, but many of researchers are active public figures and perhaps like to debate things that are basically outside their research area. And it's very important to go and say, okay, now I'm talking as a researcher, now I'm talking I'm having another role. I want to debate this, even if it's not my main area of research. Another thing when it comes to meeting the society, you have to be aware that your research in some cases can be used to harm you, to harm someone else. And that's why it's very important to see how you get consent from, for instance, if you research vulnerable groups. Or if you get to the study and the study says that a certain ethnical group in your society is stealing, do you want to hang out that group in that way? Perhaps there are other reasons for why this type of crime is more common in that group of people. So those are ethical considerations you really need to think about. And especially if that research provokes hatred and threats towards you or toward some, for instance, specific ethnical group. And last thing I wanted to talk to you is about publication ethics. It's about how you could publish your research ethically. The one thing is, of course, the duplicate, redundant, or salami publications. Salami publications is called because you try you do some experiments and then you try to slice it to as many papers as possible, and it's not really ethical. It's bad research practice to do that. So publishing the same results or the same idea, but just small differences without even saying that you have published it before, or in not what way this new article differs, is not okay. Another way of doing it is to publish the same articles in several languages without stating or cross-referencing, or it's also copyright problems with that. So if you translate one of your papers, please make sure that you state that this has been published previously in another language. Yes, it's sort of self-plagiarism as well. If you want to read more about salami publication, you can, this is quite an old article from 2013, but it's still good. It's about salami publication definitions and examples. And when it comes to salami publication, or when it comes to self-plagiarism, be transparent. It's really crucial. If you are reusing something that you have published previously, treat it like someone else's publication and make sure that you are really open. So you can read more about recommendations for preventing salami publishing. Yeah. Authorship issues. That's almost the biggest, one of the biggest things when it comes to research ethics, I think. At least what I get so many questions about when I teach research ethics, it's ethical approval and it's authorship. So what does it take to be a co-author? Here is a paper in physics, combined measurement of the high boson mass in PEP collisions, blah, blah, blah. And this paper is very special. It's from 2015. It's on 9 pages, and the list of co-authors takes 24 pages. So give me a number in the chat. How many co-authors do you think there were? Come on, give it a shot. 2 or 3? 100? Nearly 1,000? Okay, 100? 5,000? Yeah, Hatice. 5,154 co-authors. And yeah, it's quite astonishing, isn't it? But the thing here is you have to realize that in different disciplines, author has different functions. It's in humanities, we still write monographies. My PhD was a big, fat book in one monography about a dead author, so I didn't even have to ask for ethical approval. It's in literature, so it's a classical sole author. You know, it's very easy. You don't have any co-authors. And then you have co-authorship, which is very common in social sciences and in medicine and so on. And then you have contributorship. Contributorship in this case, as it was in this paper with 5,124 co-authors, basically in physics, the research is something happening outside the text. In humanities, the research is actually often the text. There is no research outside the text. If I go and analyze literature, my research is in the paper. There's no experiment outside my paper or my book. In physics, research is something that happens outside that. And everyone who was who made that experiment possible is named as co-author in physics. In medicine, the research is also done outside, but the convention is different. In medicine, co-authorship is viewed as much smaller as someone who actually wrote the paper. So there are three different ways of looking at authors, and it depends quite a lot on disciplines. In medicine and social sciences, it's common to use so-called Vancouver rules to establish who is co-author. And those rules are, first, substantial contributions to the conception or design of the work, or the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of the data for the work, and, it's not or, it's and. Drafting the work or revising it critically for important intellectual content, and final approval of the version to be published, and agreement to be accountable for all aspects of the work in ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. What is important, according to Vancouver rules, is that all authors should meet all 4 criteria, and everyone meeting all criteria should be included as author. So to lead a research group to get funding, that's not enough for co-authorship, which I know in many cases is not really what happens, but it's not according to Vancouver rules. When it comes to supervision, it's interesting to note that there is quite a huge difference between humanities and basically all other disciplines. In humanities, supervisor is doing the same job as in social sciences or in medicine, but is not normally automatically written as co-author of a paper, although the supervisor did make substantial contributions and helped drafting the work and approved it to be published and everything else. So basically it's also the reason why it appears in humanities that people are not publishing as much, but that's because supervisors, even if you are supervisor, you don't get these publications in a way you do in many other disciplines. The problem with Vancouver rules is that are not applied everywhere, and there is a text from 2019, definition of authorship in social science journals, that only 3.8% of the journals directly listed authorship definitions in the instructions for author section, and the current version of Vancouver rules was abided by 33% of the journals. Authorship order is another thing that's very important to realize differs in different disciplines. I know that in most disciplines, being the first author is like the best place, the last place is normally for the supervisor, and then you have people in the middle. But in other disciplines, and it's common in humanities, people use alphabetical order. So it's not always the case that the first author has done most of the work. And this is quite important to discuss before you start writing an article, and especially if you have multidisciplinary articles, because you might come from different disciplines where the first author is not the most important one, or you might want to publish in a journal where there are other requirements and what you are used to. And of course, we have this publisher perish situation. Ioannidis has written quite a lot about that. There are thousands of scientists publish a paper every 5 days. The culture of publish or perish is really horrible, and you can really assume that that scientists publish a paper every 5 days perhaps are not as involved in writing those papers in a way they should be, because it's almost impossible to be this prolific without really not using it in a good way. The problem, everyone wants to be a co-author, everyone wants to, because we have this publish or perish situation, but bear in mind one thing, and that is that you are actually responsible also, being a co-author, for the ethical aspect of that paper. Which means that if someone else has done something unethical in the paper, it's going to cast a bad shadow on you, even if you were not responsible for that part of the paper. So don't be careful. Of course, everyone's, oh, there's one more publication, of course I want to be a co-author. People do that, but you take the responsibility as well. And that is something that's very important to think about. Also, I think it's very important to think, to go back to these rules of co-authorship. I know that in many cases you have problems with these professors just assuming that they must be co-author on every single paper that is published that comes from a certain lab. As you can see, they shouldn't be. I know that there are power dimensions when it comes to being a PhD student. It's not easy to go and say to your professor, okay, but you haven't actually even read this paper, you shouldn't be a co-author. But I hope that now, when we have a research ethics for PhD students in all over the world, and it's mandatory in most universities, so many universities, not perhaps most, but so many, that we are going to change the system, because this is not okay. And always be certain that you do all these requirements and that you meet all these requirements, because you are taking responsibility for this paper. It's not just one more paper on your CV. You are ethically responsible for the ethical part of the paper as well. I think that's what I had. Yeah, it's because basically of this publish or perish, that the funding, I know that the pressure for individual research and for the department are really, really horrible, that there are more journals, more conferences, that you have open access journals that has been misused as predatory journals. I know you are having a whole session on that, so I'm not going to talk about that. I think that's yeah, I just wanted to say that it's open access, it's a great thing, but the way for predators to get rich, so you know that, because you are going to have that. What I wanted to discuss now is how can we prevent misconduct. You have heard so many different types of misconduct, not only fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, but how can we change the system? How can we prevent misconduct to have good science? So that's what I would like to discuss with you in the chat.
While waiting for them to write, I just wanted to clarify one question which I missed. Is one of them asked about the medical research. Does it take longer time to get the ethics? It depends. You know, any research ethic application, if it is thorough, it will take some time. But easy way to minimize the time delay is to be prepared, think about the before, during, and after, and probably discuss with some of the officials in the ethical committee, get their advice, and then try to apply it.
So give us good examples. What do you think? How can we prevent misconduct?
I can read it for you, Sonia, if you want.
I can see it because I'm in the chat. To help researchers internalize the ethical values. Yeah, and we go back to what Shiva showed you in the beginning, that it really is not only about getting the ethical approval and the funding and ticking the box. Okay, give us other ideas. How can we help researchers? Discuss the harms and educate in early education stage. Organizing events like this summer school, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Enforce rules and regulations and make sure that all stakeholders are aware of these. Promoting participation in academic integrity workshops, yeah, I think education is really the key. Overall, the role of our community is significant in our values and perspectives. Institutions must provide support for researchers to conduct ethical research, but there should also be significant consequences for serious misconduct. Yeah. Raise awareness on this issue. Yeah, that's what we are doing with courses. Yeah. Yeah, it is very important to talk about it. So perhaps take out what you might want to take to your institution after this week is perhaps to organize workshops, organize webinars, help your colleagues get this kind of information, be champions yourself of academic integrity and research ethics. And of course, institutional monitoring mechanisms. You can't change the world yourself. We have to have the institutions behind us and the whole system, basically. And I know that system is not always doing it easy. If it's about ethical research, improve awareness among academics in my regions why ethical research is important, and have an ethical board and supporting system. Yeah. Knowing what misconduct is, because most of the people do not do something if they know that it's bad. Yeah, I think information courses is really, it really is a key, and it's very good to. I'm going to give you some things you might want to check. So I'm going to save your weekend now. Now you are working until Friday, but this is for Saturday, and then you can have some fun on Sunday, so whole week. The first one is Dilemma Game. Dilemma Game is an app, but it's also a PDF. It's done as an Erasmus Plus project in Netherlands. I can show you later. It's basically you have a dilemma, and then you have 4 answers, and it's very good to start a discussion. And it's something you might even want to use if you organize this type of workshops I am proposing. So that's Saturday. On Sunday, if you like, don't look Game of Thrones, this is much better, on Being a Scientist. So it's a movie that's really cool. It's you can see it as a series or just as a movie. It's very fun. And then especially if you're in the medicine, but it's even fun in many other for many other researchers. There is an interactive movie called The Lab. You go, you see the part of the movie, and then you choose one of 4 characters, and you can choose what they are going to do. And then you click on that, and then the movie continues. You get the feedback on your choices, and can go back and choose something else, and so on and so on. So you decide what is going to happen in that movie, so you can get ethical, good ethical choices. It's very American in many ways, so it's not perhaps applicable in all countries, but it's really, really cool done, and very cool to see that. So now I've saved your weekend, and I'm going to stop sharing this. If you want, we have 10 more minutes. I can show you the dilemma game as well. So we can do one of them at least, if we have time. this is really one of my favorite resources for training PhD students and supervisors, and having it for different, because it's very good to have like all supervisors or all PhD students and have this discussion with them. You have dilemma overview. It's like in this PDF, it's 75, but they're adding actually more dilemmas in the app. So something you want to check? Decide on one, Shiva. Give me the number.
46.
46.
Yeah.
Single check. Okay, I'm in a tenure track position, and the tenure decision will depend on the number and quality of my publications. I have almost finished the paper, and now that I should take some more time to double check the data and analysis. However, it is of crucial importance for the tenure decision to get the paper published as soon as possible. What do? A, I decide not to publish the paper before I have done all extensive checks. B, I decide to submit the paper to a less prestigious journal to be certain it will be published. C, I check my data and analysis more cursorily so that I can still submit my paper in time. Or D, I ask my supervisor to read my paper, and if he has no profound comments, I submit it. What do you think? We perhaps can stop recording so everyone can just feel free to participate, or you can write in the chat. A, not to publish paper before I have done work, but you really need